ahead, talk.
Oh, testing, 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
Recording in progress.
All right. You gonna open the meeting? Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Attendance: Neil Mascola. Here. Eileen Bronco.
Here.
AJ Bordas.
Here.
Tommy Kiernan.
Here.
Francis Santana.
Here.
And Rick Poole. All present. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the December 15th, 2021 zoning commission meeting.
With
we
the
have any-
corrections, we had a couple, some typos in there, so with those corrections.
Yeah, we made them earlier.
So then, yes. Make a
Second.
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. All right, so
We've got to
what else can we do
wait
to?
to go over here.
Yeah. Yeah, we got 2 more minutes.
Nothing really in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, the next one, just wait.
Hey, what's going on at that gas station, Union City? Everything's come to a screeching halt?
Okay. The latest that I've heard is they're having an issue with the state of Connecticut for their truck entrance in and out. What happened was that they get a permit from the state of Connecticut
Oh, okay, yeah.
because they're using 68 there.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
That permit had expired.
Oh.
And now the state's looking at it again. And there was something on the new owners, the permit that they put in, that they said they were gonna cross that.
Oh, jeez.
So it's really out of our hands. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with us. But now they're dealing with the state on it. The state's saying, well, we can't let a truck pull out and possibly go into the other lane. So they're going back and forth with the state right now. I know Jim Stewart
That stinks.
has communicated with DOT on it. Especially even the side road there.
Golden Hill.
Not Gold Hill goes to St. Edwards. The other one, Golden Court or whatever it is.
Yes,
It goes down to North Main.
Yeah.
That's a state road.
Really?
So they have,
Wow.
so that's where they are right now with that.
Is there any word on what's going on with the assisted living that was supposed to be down on that end too?
I think they've received their financing. They, I know Lori spoke to them briefly. That's all, they were waiting on financing and some stuff. There may be a change to the plan. The building may not be as tall as they're saying.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
You just made Eileen
but they were
day.
going to come back to us, obviously, but I think there was something that it might only be 3 floors fit, and they might be looking for a parking, and so I think they communicated with the people who buy the houses more.
Mhm.
So obviously, they got to get all their ducks in a row before they come back to us on
All right, so 6:05, can we start?
it. Yeah, go right ahead.
All right, so I'm going to continue the public hearing at 6:05 for the proposed special permit application for a 1 megawatt solar panel facility for the property located at 0 Bosco Drive, account number 016-9188, applicant Tritech Americas LLC.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, I am Chris Gagnon, professional engineer with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway. Here we are again in front of you all. Hope everybody had a nice holiday break. So this is obviously a continuation of the public hearing from the last few months, and it was continued in December because we had a few, I'll qualify as minor items to clean up with the town engineer. As discussed at that hearing, it was our intent to respond to his comments in a timely manner to allow for everybody a chance to review the documentation. I am happy to say that we submitted those documents on, it's the 22nd, something like that.
Yeah, it was just before Christmas.
Just before Christmas, so, we hit that, deadline for everybody, and, as a result, Mr. Stewart was able to review the documents, and, he has provided a letter, to the commission, indicating that the applicant has addressed his engineering comments for the project, and that he recommends some conditions of approval as a result of his letter. I'm sure you've all received it, so I don't need to read it, but I just thought it was important to get on the record that we did indeed turn those comments around quickly for you. For his review with the holidays and everything. So that has happened.
Before you go any further, Chris, let me just say, I did provide that to you in your packets, the letter from Jim Stewart dated December 30th, along with, there was an overlay I'm sure he's going to talk about, and the supplemental stormwater memo. And tonight, I gave you a couple of documents. One, when I received a review from Trinkus Engineering earlier this week, I emailed it out to you, and I told you I would also give you a copy of it at the meeting, which that's in front of you now. And then I have provided to you a letter that I received from the applicant in regard to a formal notice of application of zoning compliance to the borough. Okay, so we can talk about those. I just want to let you know what you've got from me, along with an updated print that was submitted to us. We received on December 23rd. That was in your packet. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Just to go back to the last hearing, one of the items that was commented on was the concept of building coverage, maximum lot coverage for this development. In this zone, 15% is the allowable max coverage. We did analysis assuming the panels qualified for such, and the result of that is that the panels cover 13.3% of the lot. So the plans depict that now. So that was a technical data point that we wanted to make sure that we got covered. And then a couple of the other items in dealing with Mr. Stewart's letter was some revisions to the, revisions to the outlet of the stormwater and some minor massagings of the grading of the basin to make sure we weren't going to impact any of the potential ledge that we have out there. Introduction of some check dams and some other things that he requested. For example, at this roadway right here, we have shifted the low point so that in the event that this little plunge pool here fills up and isn't going through the pipe, the low point of the road lines up with where the overflow would be to make sure everything goes into the basin. So it's just some finer details to the grading and layout of the basins, and based on Mr. Stewart's review of that submittal, he has indicated that this final stormwater revision met his requirements, and he has recommended approvals. Going also back to the hearing last month, a lot of discussion was about the concept of the offset related to tree clearing versus the solar development. And in my opinion, that conversation left out an important part. And that part is, this is a legal developable lot in town. Based on the zoning that it's in, it could be residential, it could have churches, it could have recreation areas, any number of things. All of those developments would require tree clearing to execute that that development of the lot. So looking at it as tree clearing for solar versus leaving the lot as is, in my opinion, is an inaccurate representation of what actually will be going on this property. Whether it's a solar development or not, the owner of the property intends to do something with this lot. So the conversation related to tree clearing and solar, I think it needs to be a conversation related to the fact that this is a legal developable lot in town, potentially has access to water and sewer, which can help increase the level of development at the lot. So I just wanted to make that point to you all, that it's not leave the site as is or clear trees for solar. It is clear trees for solar, which then does provide some carbon benefit return, because it is helping feed the grid with energy that does not have a carbon footprint. It's tree clearing for that versus tree clearing for putting in a church, putting in some sort of recreation area. And then it also should be noted that all of those other development options also require a lot more pavement, a lot more earthwork, a lot more grading and drainage associated with it. So, in my opinion, it's important that we compare this to other potential developments that we could have out there. So I thought that was an important conversation piece. Additionally, we have, no, Ed, if this is what you said, this is not any new information. This is all information that has previously been provided. But what we wanted to do was to show the evolution of the layout of the property as a result of this process. Because there has been also some conversation that in a negative way, that the plans have changed as a result of being in front of this board. And I believe it was the town attorney that eloquently put it, that when projects are in front of the commission, they evolve and get better. And in my opinion, this project is no different from other projects in that event. And the important thing to show here is that the location of the limits of the development and the fence line has significantly shifted from the residential properties that are located to the south of our development. We listened to the comments and questions raised by folks, and in my opinion, reacted accordingly to that and have adjusted our layout. And also, in the same vein, the stormwater management analysis has evolved based on input from and coordination with the town engineer, producing a better plan as well. So really, that is that is essentially the extent of my I'm going to say new presentation. This what I've just handed in front of you is not, it's no new information. This is included in all of the documents that you've been provided. I just don't think we ever showed in a easy to see, just flip the page, how the layout has adjusted. So now the closest panel is 148 feet from the property line adjacent to the nearest residential property, and it was 67 feet. So the hardscape improved portion of the project is essentially half a football field away from the property line in this area. And in moving it away, we've also proposed a very robust landscaping plan that will hopefully provide visual relief for everyone. So again, this is not new information. This site plan reflects the plans that have been provided. It was just never where we were and where we are. I think this was the simplest way to show it to the commission. So
So where's the fence line on here? Is it this piece right here?
yeah, it's the little line with the X's. I guess it's hard to see, but I'll.
The document that your staff provided to us on January 4th that was in your packet, you
Yeah.
might be able to see the fence a little better.
Okay.
The little line with the little
Oh, okay,
X's.
got it. Now, what color's the fence?
As of right now, it is a standard galvanized fence.
Would you be open to having it black? Black or green? Yeah, black, I'm thinking,
Yes,
would be
I
more
would be totally comfortable with that as a condition.
like,
Better green, yeah, under them.
Yeah, and happy to accommodate the commission. In our experience, the black fences somewhat fade away, whereas you can see the green a little more, but either or would be just fine for the applicant.
And that's the what height was that? It was 6 foot or 8 foot, or 6 foot, wasn't it?
I believe
It was
we
changed to 8.
It was changed to 8, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, 8 feet is in the plan. So that essentially concludes the presentation, going over what we provided to Mr. Stewart, which he was happy with. Plus, we looked at the zoning bulk requirements as requested, and I think I provided some context on tree clearing versus other developments, and it should be noted that any subdivision, any sort of residential development, obviously trees get cut for those types of things as well. And then we also provided kind of a comparison of the evolution of the project, which I believe is a positive. It's not necessarily negative. I think it's showing that the process has worked and hopefully provides you with a project that the commission is comfortable with. And thank you very much for all your time. I appreciate the help of the town staff. I appreciate working with the town engineer. He's not here right now, but and then all the time that the commission has put into this. Thank you very much.
Question, no trees or any greenery abutting the trailer park?
We have not proposed any additional landscaping on that side.
So it's just gonna be the black fence?
No, all arborvitae.
Oh, I was looking at the previous plan. I wasn't looking at the current plan. We have proposed arborvitae's along the limits of the mobile home community.
So that's the dark line that's
Yes.
supposed to be greenery?
Yes.
Also, you have the, on the opposite side, abutting that neighbor, the triangular piece, but you go halfway to the next house. Is there any reason why you didn't clear the, continue that through the back of that property?
The existing vegetation there is fairly thick, but if the commission would like, we could extend the screening adjacent to the fencing there. But in our opinion, the natural screening there was sufficient.
Yeah, I didn't see that, so I don't know. Also, you had, in the other plans, didn't it say 11.45 or 11.15 acres that we were looking at, but now we have 12.2 and, or, yeah, 12.282? Are those numbers different than they were?
They shouldn't be, that might be a typo.
They're, what, this is a typo?
Yeah.
Well, there's a report that came, a recent report also that said that 12.2, and so there's, most of the other plans said 11.45.
Yeah, so there is a, the access strip of Bosco Drive is, for the zoning application, shall be included to it, but I believe that the stormwater plans and the other report is just referencing the size of the development.
So the 11 point, I guess 45 or 1, I don't remember it, was more than the now disturbance of 8.2?
The zoning memo does not reflect the size of disturbance.
So then
We're
what's
also-
the 11? I don't understand. I mean, I can,
Yeah,
Try to get out
I'm not
what-
sure what the 11 you're referencing. The lot is right around 12 acres, and the limited disturbance is right around 8.2 acres, and that's been consistent / evolved a little bit based on the evolution of the grading plan. But I'm not quite sure which one you're referencing.
So you're saying the access road,
11.5 acres. Here it is on this plan.
what's the
So it's
number at the bottom?
EX1.
EX1, okay, this here.
So area is 11.5 acres.
11.1.
This 12.2 is new.
I think the 12.2, he says, is including the access road, because that's all part of their property. but they're only based in all their numbers, correct? The project on 11.15?
Correct. The lot itself is 11.15, and then the access strip adds the additional acreage. The size of the lot hasn't changed, and the size of the development hasn't changed.
So the access road that goes up to it is a separate parcel?
Yes.
And I know it has been.
Yes.
The road here
Right,
is a separate parcel?
right.
And that's
I guess, I don't know why it's included now then.
That's 0.88 acres.
the main road? That's the road?
Yeah.
So you add the point eight to the 11.15, and you come out with 12.
Yeah. And then the road itself was filed on the records prior to this development. We need to do a minor lot line adjustment for that, but the size of the development is not, there's no changes to the size of the development from any of the previous.
So this area here is the 11.5.
Yes.
And how many panels did we put in?
There's a bunch. I have that in my notes. Bear with me.
And what's the zone here? I don't, is it, I thought it was R30.
R30, I believe.
It is R30. It's an R30 zone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was around 3,000 panels, that's what they said last time. Or before.
Yeah, that, the 3,000 is the approximate number. I thought it had it in the statement.
Thank you.
We have any more questions for Tommy?
For him? Yeah. The 148 feet, where's that to? Is that to the, no, listen.
Yeah, he is.
That's to the closest panel to the property,
Closest panel,
to that property line,
closest solar panel.
yes.
Okay, so the road is closer.
Yes.
How far is the fence of that?
The fence is another, the road is 12 feet wide, so the fence is another 15 feet away, so it's probably 130 feet from the fence to the property line.
130 feet from the property line to the fence?
Yes,
Okay.
going as the bird flies from the back corner of that residential property.
And that's the shortest distance, 100.
That's the distance, yeah, that is the closest panel to that property line, and then on that line that we've depicted.
No, not the panel, the fence itself. You got the
Yeah.
fence, you got the road, then you got the solar panels,
Yes.
correct? To the fence, so
Yes,
how far? It's 130 feet?
yes.
Okay.
130 feet behind a lot of,
And how about the other side there too? Up where the, you got a bunch of, I don't know what them are.
Where you talking, where the trailer park is, Tom?
Yeah. How far is it there to the fence?
the fence on that side. Is approximately 15 feet off the property line.
That's
10 to
15.
15 feet off the property line. Enough room for arborvitae's.
So the arborvitae's are between the property there and the fence?
Yes.
Anything else, Ben?
No, just arborvitae's. I know the deer eat them a lot. That's,
Yeah, we've heard that.
you could see them on the side of the road. They're this big and then they,
Yeah,
you know, like
they're
that.
deer height. eat.
Yeah, right.
And then everything looks good above. Yeah, yeah, that is an option. It provides a nice buffer when it's not eaten. There are other deer-proof evergreen plantings that have been specified on other projects that could be a potential alternate if the commission would like to see a deer-proof.
Because that is loaded with deer there. That's a lot of deer. That's it.
Anyone else from the commission?
So I just want to say, you do have, since you mentioned Mr. Stewart was not able to be here this evening, he's currently out of town. He will review this meeting, and anything that's presented tonight, he will go over, and he, as staff, he can make any recommendations to you at the next meeting or before the next meeting.
Do we have to have a special meeting? Are we almost out
We
of
do
time?
not, we do not. As staff, he doesn't have to do it with a public hearing. I think if you want to go with Mr. Green,
Want to open up to Mr. Green,
to Attorney Green.
Attorney Green?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff. Once again, for the record, my name is Joel Green. I appear before you on behalf of Inga and Anthony Oren, who own on budding property on Farmstead Lake. And first, I'd like to thank the commission for your generous patience on this application, and I appreciate the opportunity that you've provided to my clients and to me and our consultants and to the public in allowing input on this application. I know these are challenging times with the medium that we have to use, and having Zoom and that sort of thing, but I appreciate all of your effort. The one comment I would make is that it's very difficult to, with the applicant being on site and with the public being off site, it's very difficult to follow the exhibits that are being presented, and you can't really see that on the feed, and that's a bit of a problem in responding, but once again, I recognize these are challenging times. So, we obviously, I've made a number of comments already, and I'll try not to be redundant, but I just can't emphasize enough how we're a massive and intrusive use. I'm sorry. getting some kind of feedback. But what a massive and intrusive use of property this is, and once again, I urge you to really put yourself in the place of my clients and their neighbors in terms of developing a site so intensely. And while I recognize that the applicant has done an analysis of the coverage and the applicant claims that the panels they're using comes in under 15%, this is kind of unique because basically with an 11-acre parcel, what they're doing is they have nearly 1.5 acres of panels spread over the entire 11 acres. And you know, there was a view, a before and after view from my client's property, but make no mistake about it. From the property line, my clients will see a massive solar panel array. From their home, looking in that direction, they'll see a massive solar panel array, and several of their neighbors will as well. And I think that that's probably why when this commission adopted, and when Naugatuck adopted zoning regulations and uses in districts, you know, you specifically found that electric power plants and significantly generating facilities and gas storage, and gas storage is kind of an inert activity, but generating facilities are not permitted uses in residential zones such as an R30 zone. And while I know I've already addressed sort of the interpretation that was made, and you know, we obviously take issue with the process of this sort of interpretive function that the commission plays in interpreting your regulation, and I just can't emphasize enough that basically this sort of facility spread over 11 acres is nothing like a power transmission tower, and really you're taking an elephant and comparing it to a giraffe in that interpretation, and really your regulations say you can't have a generating facility, and then you sort of liken it to a tower, and that's obviously our position is that this is not a permitted use, and you know, this commission can decline to rely on that interpretation. Now, I will talk a little bit about, and one other comment I have to make is, at this juncture, is that the applicant made a comment that this is like a zero carbon footprint project, and that's really not true. And it's almost like with electric vehicles, there's a lot of discussion now about electric vehicles, and everyone talks about the carbon footprint, but if you really look into it, and it's not conclusive. By the time you get through building that car and building the batteries that drive it, and similarly when you get through manufacturing solar panels, and when you get through decommissioning and destroying solar panels, there's a huge carbon debt involved in all these activities. And I'm not sure the script is written, but one thing's for sure, it is not a zero carbon footprint project, and no one would claim that, can claim that. Now, one of the problems with the presentation by the applicant is it's just in engineering. And so when the applicant says the property, if this is a permitted use, it's a permitted use, just like schools, just like churches. Well, first of all, I think there's a whole different view, and I'm sure you can all understand this. There's a whole different view to having a school on a neighboring property or a church on a neighboring property in terms of the nature of the use, as opposed to solar panels. And the fact is, yes, it is a permitted use, but arguably, well, obviously we're contesting that it's permitted use, but we are here on a special permit, and it doesn't just come down to engineering. It comes down to the standards in your regulations. And interestingly, the applicant tonight sort of said, well, I'm not going to address certain of the issues raised, but nothing, almost nothing that the applicant has done really addresses the standards in 33.5, the considerations, the general considerations, and the general standards in your regulations. And I'll discuss that in a moment. But while we're on the engineering piece, I know you were provided with a copy of the updated report by Steve Trinkus, and what I'd like to do is call on Mr. Trinkus to sort of highlight the more salient portions of his report for you, go through the issues that our clients raised with respect to the engineering. And I think you'll find that many of the considerations that Mr. Trinkus raises are common sense and simply haven't been addressed. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Trinkus, and then after he's finished and after the commission asks any questions, I'll talk about the general standards for a special permit.
Thank you, Attorney Green. For the record, my name is Stephen Trinkus. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut in office 114 Hunters Ridge Road in Southbury. As the chairman mentioned, I had an updated letter from January 14, 2022. A couple comments I'd like to address the applicant made, comparing this to a residential subdivision. Even in an R30 zone, which is a 30,000 square foot zone, or about 3/4 of an acre, you might have a quarter to a third of the acre be cleared for the house because you have sewer and water, as the applicant pointed out. So you would have woods, and you would have that on each and every lot. So you're not clear cutting the site, which is happening here. So it is not an appropriate a comparison of clear cutting, roughly 11 acres with, a residential subdivision on the same 11 acres. Also, as Attorney Green, discussed a little bit with carbon footprint. Solar that goes in front of the siting council and would also, I guess, apply here. When there's an EPA, what they call carbon debt analysis, and what the EPA analysis simply looks at is by generating electrical power by solar, how many gallons less oil would you use basically to generate electricity by an oil burning power plant or a natural gas plant. It does not take into account the loss of carbon sequestering that occurs on a forest site and a meadow site, both in the green vegetation and in the soil, which is substantial. So when you clear cut the site and you even if you York rake it, you have to remove all the stumps, you're disturbing the soil, but you've gotten rid of all the vegetation that stores carbon dioxide and gives you oxygen off. And a tree that is 0 to 10 years old will sequester about 13 pounds of carbon per year up to that initial 10-year period. Between 10 years and roughly 88 years, which is the average age of a northern hardwood forest in Connecticut and New England for that matter, that same tree will now sequester 48 pounds of carbon per year. Roughly there's 100 trees per acre, so it gets to be a lot of carbon. So when you clear cut it, you lose all of it, which has been sequestered already. You also lose a lot of it in the soil by the disturbance of the soil profile, especially in the upper meter or less, where a lot of carbon is stored. Now, once the array is done in 20 to 25 years and it's removed, it's not going to be replanted as a forest. It's likely to be seeded as a meadow, and ultimately Mother Nature will take that meadow and put it back to a forest, probably in about 120 years. So you've lost all the carbon sequestering from the start of the array for a long period of time. So these are not carbon neutral by any source. And as Attorney Green pointed out, you also have to look at, the processing of, the getting of the raw materials, the processing it, the making of the solar panels, the steel posts that this sit on, you can't make without fossil fuels, and the transportation and the decommissioning. So, they are not carbon neutral by any measure at all. And my comments regarding forestry are based on my Bachelor of Science in Forestry from the University of New Hampshire, so they're not as my position as a licensed professional engineer. Regarding my January 14th letter, in the applicant's response, they talked, that I recommended soil cutoff walls in the level spreaders. I did no such thing. There is no comment such as that in my report. The issue with the applicant's plan in proposing what came out of Maryland, which are these level spreaders theoretically under the drip lines, a level spreader has to be level. That's the operative word. So if you put them under the drip line of a fixed panel, in this particular case, they're running downhill. They're running from the north to the south. But as this array is going to be one of the rotating arrays, then there's no way you can put a level spreader under the drip line because the drip line is constantly moving throughout the day. So all of this water is not going to be caught in a level spreader trench. It is just going to run through the downgrading swale and be conveyed to one of the other basins. The detail for the swale shows check dams in them, but they show the height of the check dam to the top of the swale. If you put a check dam into the top of the swale, if the water fills up to the top of that, it overflows the swale. And now you have overland flow going someplace that you did not intend it to go. Additionally, check dams have a spacing requirement based on the slope of the swale, where the top of one check dam is equal to the bottom of the next one uphill. So on a very flat site, depending on the height of the check dam, you know, they could be 20, 30 foot apart. But if you get a swale that's 8, 9, 10% grade, they could actually wind up being 10 to 15 foot apart, a very small spacing, and that's not reflected on the plans at all. You know, going back to the original plans for stormwater management, the western basin closest to Bosco Drive was going to be an infiltration basin. And the applicant made an assumption in their report that groundwater was pretty deep there. But on the other basin, on the eastern side, they were going to have a wet pond or a pocket pond, I believe. And they said, well, we're assuming groundwater is about 18 or 24 inches over there. Well, now that eastern basin has somehow become an infiltration basin, but if their original soil statement is correct that you have shallow groundwater there, then the infiltration basin will not work. That's the fact of life. You cannot infiltrate into a saturated zone at all. There is no test pit in that eastern basin. There is only one test pit, I believe, in the western basin. It's on the, I think I would call the northeast corner of it. So we really don't know the soils in the eastern basin at all. The majority of the comments that I previously submitted on stormwater management have not been addressed. While the applicant has provided some photos of this rotating solar array, we have no idea what the type of mechanical system this is. Is it a motor system? Is the motors have hydraulic fluid in them? We have no idea, and hence there's a potential environmental impact if these are motors that have hydraulic oil in them, where if they have a problem or they catch on fire, you're going to have a discharge of oil onto the ground surface, and that's not going to be adequately treated. The basin berms, particularly for, I believe it's infiltration pond 1, are still greater than 4 feet above existing grade. And under the DEP, you have to get an opinion from the Dam Safety Division, and I will tell you from recent experience, they will consider this a dam. Anything over 4 foot becomes a dam, and what that requires is that the berm has to be designed as a dam, not just a big pile of dirt, which is pretty much a standard detention basin as far as that goes. The applicant has level spreaders at the discharges of these 2 basins, which are basically a little bit of a riprap swale laid along the contour line. The problem is riprap in a trench does not give you a level edge. Water will always find the path of least resistance, the lowest point. So as that trench fills up with water from the discharge, it will find the one spot that's lower than anywhere else, and that's where concentrated flow will occur, and you will not get overland flow across the entire length of those level spreaders. What happens is the concentrated flow will occur at one point and then start running down the slope. And these are fairly steep slopes below both of these basins. You're going to get erosion of that upland slope, and then you're going to get downgrading sedimentation, in some cases on private property beyond the subject site. And that's true for both of the basins. The 2004 DEP Stormwater Quality Manual, which I understand is going, I believe, through some revisions with DEP, there are specifications for all types of stormwater practices, whether it's a wet pond, constructed wetlands, an infiltration basin. And infiltration basins are not designed to accept all runoff as they're being asked to do here. And the reason for that is that excess water running into these basins beyond the water quality storm, which is 1 inch of rain in 24 hours, can stir up fine sediments on the bottom, and you only need a 16th to an 1/8 inch of fine sediment on the bottom of an infiltration practice to clog that surface completely. At many of the more recent LID conferences from roughly 2015 through 18 that I've attended and presented at, there have been several case studies of large-scale infiltration basins where they accepted where all runoff was directed to them, and this siltation and clogging occurred to the point where they made infiltration basins that were located in sand and gravel soils fail because that top surface got clogged because of all the flows there. Infiltration basins are designed to be an offline practice where that first inch of runoff is directed to it, and then all water is beyond the 1 inch storm is directed to another practice, which means you're effectively building 2 basins. That's why they are not commonly used as a stormwater management practice, because of the impracticality of having to build 2 basins if you want to do that. We don't have infiltration testing here. It's appropriate. What I believe the geotech did was they did borings, and then they filled the pipe which they put into the borehole with water, and they got an infiltration rate at the bottom. But that's a pressurized infiltration test because you have a column of water in a narrow pipe. Water weighs 62 pounds roughly per cubic foot. So you put it in a small vertical tube, and it puts a lot of pressure on the bottom, and it will force the water into the soil, whereas an infiltration test, which is generally done at the bottom or 3 feet below an actual infiltration practice with what's called a double ring infiltrometer, is only going into the ground 3 or 4 inches. And therefore, it's simply the capillary action of water moving into the soil that gives you an infiltration rate, not pressure that's pushing it in. There was another project I reviewed years ago where the applicant did a similar test, and they claimed they could infiltrate into bedrock by this test. It doesn't happen. So we don't have data to know that these systems will work, and if they don't work, that water is going to adversely affect the neighbors to the southwest and to the southeast. And the swale that's being proposed is more of a very narrow ditch. It is not a water quality swale. It's a very narrow bottom. It's only, I believe, a foot deep. And it with the check dams as proposed, can overtop, and now the neighbors to the south, including my clients, Anthony and Inga, can get water from the site. I have reviewed, many large ground-mounted solar, primarily in eastern Connecticut. I've also designed one in Winchester, and the one in Winchester is an 8-acre array, so it's slightly smaller than this. But I will tell you now that the panels are up. You can't see them from the road, but if I go down into the woods 300 feet, I can still see the panels because they're sloping uphill, and that's what's going to be the view from my client's property, because the site slopes from the south to the north. And even though there's a landscape buffer now with the actual panels being pushed back by their property, the land is going up and the panels are sitting 6 to 7 feet above grade. They will definitely be extremely visible. Regarding the proposed landscaping, arborvitaes, spruce trees, any type of conifer, they tend to grow taller initially before they get wider. So while they might get taller, the top of the tree is very, very thin, and it stays that way for years. I have some in my backyard from the storm we had back in 18 that wreaked havoc in this area. And while the trees have gotten probably 3 foot taller, they hasn't gotten any wider at the top. They're very thin. They're almost like sticks. So they're not going to provide an effective barrier visually for 15 or 20 years until they get tall enough where the bottom starts getting pushy enough and then provides actual screening. But from an engineering perspective, the stormwater management systems here are not in compliance with the DEP manual. They will not function as intended, and they will fail over time and thus cause adverse impacts to the adjacent properties. Thank you.
I don't know if the commission has questions for Mr. Trinkus.
Anyone have any questions? No, we're good.
All right, so, you know, towards that viewscape sort of issue that we've raised, I'm wondering if I can share my screen with the commission.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Share screen at the bottom.
Okay.
You should be able to do that. Yeah.
This, this rendering, to me, is particularly troubling. I know you have this in your packet, it's online. This is a view of, towards the property from my client's property, on my client's property. And this is the after, and this is laughable. This applicant is suggesting to this commission all these flowers and all this beautiful landscaping and all these pink spring flowers, and the trees are in bloom. And it's just, I always just scratch my head when applicants submit these kind of photos as if they're selling property online. And I hope that this commission sort of understands that this is a fantasy. But from where this is taken, all you have to do is walk a couple of feet forward and you'll be looking at a sea of black solar panels glowing in the sun. And this is just offensive to me, but I just wanted to cover that. But it's certainly troubling to my clients and should be troubling to the commission. So, so as I said, the applicant spent a lot of time talking about engineering issues, but the applicant really failed to address the kinds of standards and considerations this commission has to consider in adopting and granting a special permit in this instance. And for example, under 33.5 of your regulations, the applicant really has to address, and this commission has to consider the size and intensity of the proposed use and the size of the lot in which it's located. And as I indicated earlier, what neighborhood would you impose a solar farm that takes up virtually the entire site? And while I appreciate the applicant's effort at pulling it back somewhat from my client's property, there's a lot of properties around this site and by this site, and they didn't pull back from those properties. It is just such a broad, vast use of the site, and I can't help but wonder, when this commission began considering solar panels and residential zones, whether you thought about what it really conjures up in everyone's mind, and that's kind of the notion that people would have solar panels on their homes, on the roofs, on garages, on other structures on the property, potentially sheds. And it is difficult for me to conceive that this commission, in interpreting the regulation, ever conceived of such a massive and intensive commercial use. And it is a fully commercial use in a residential zone. And it really, and when the applicant compares it to schools and churches and uses of the town, those are not for-profit uses. And those are subject to a special permit procedure. And those are understandable because they serve your local community. They are important institutions in a community. And so certainly we can understand how those have to be interspersed at times through residential zones. But so many speakers who got up early on in the public hearing said to this commission, there are so many sites in the town where this would be appropriate. And how can you do this to this neighborhood? And I would also add, be careful, because you don't want to become that town that has solar panels everywhere and interspersed everywhere, solar panel farms in residential zones. But, so, first of all, it's the size and intensity, and the applicant really did address that in any thoughtful way in terms of the intensity of the use on the site. The effect of the proposed use on the plan of conservation and development. And I looked at your plan of conservation and development. The applicant didn't speak to it a bit, not a bit. And your plan of conservation and development does not support the notion of economic development in residential zones. To the contrary, your plan of conservation and development respects and protects the residential character of the residential zones in your town. And once again, applicant, zero on that. 33.5.4, the effect upon property values. You heard Mr. Guardiano, a licensed appraiser. And what did he say? He said, this will depress property values around this site. And that's the only evidence you have. The only evidence you have on the effect on property values was the testimony that we provided, and it is unequivocally going to have a negative impact on values of properties, including my client's property. And the applicant, zero, offered nothing on property values, not a lick. 33.5.7 talks about water supply, sewage disposal, drainage, and erosion. What Mr. Trinkus talked to you about is the fact that there will be a lot of runoff off these panels. There will be a significant amount of erosion. These panels move, and he's talking about the drip line being on the water that runs off the edges of these panels, and they're going to pivot, and they're going to be in different locations. And he discussed that with you, and that's an issue. And the applicant has not meaningfully addressed that defect in the plan. Next is, again, drainage considerations are in 33.5.12, and it includes the effects on downhill or other properties off-site. Mr. Trinkus has offered you information on that, and that there will be an erosive effect on properties downhill. Going to your general standards, and this is critical, is 33.7.2 says that the site plan, and it also references architectural plans, but it talks about the site plan shall be of a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood, to accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character, to protect property values, and to preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community. And you just can't find that that exists with this application. And I can't say it enough, and I've actually litigated a lot of cases on the so-called soft standards for special permits. And I handled the St. Joseph's case, which is an appellate court case that came down 5 years ago, and it says that these so-called soft standards, now when you look at a special permit, there are your hard standards, which are your setbacks, your height, your coverage, and those are sort of the hard standards. But the soft standards, those character standards, sort of character, harmony, property values, the courts have come down on that and said that those factors count. And those are findings that this commission must make in granting a special permit. And as I pointed out, the applicant has just really addressed engineering issues and has not addressed any of these so-called soft standards. And I would suggest that the commission really cannot make those findings. You cannot address those considerations because the applicant has not provided you with that information. Whereas my clients and so many of the speakers that got up before you presented real and common sense concerns to just plunking an 11-acre solar farm in the middle of a residential zone. So I just can't urge you enough to deny this application and to sort of learn from this application to recast your regulations in terms of what you're going to allow where your citizens in your town live. And I think this provides a departure point for this commission to look at these kinds of facilities. I think working with your zoning officials in town, I think you can fashion a regulation that really protects and addresses the standards, again, that would apply to a special permit. Once again, it is our basic position that this is not a permitted use because it is an electric generating facility. And by interpretation, to call it basically an electrical tower we don't think it's fair, or frankly won't withstand review by court. But in any event, I think that there are just so many holes in this application that I really, the commission should decline to grant it. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Go ahead.
Attorney Green, Ed Carter, I have one question for you. When you referred to the St. Joe's case, was that the case with the lighting of the athletic fields at St. Joe's?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank
St.
you.
Joseph's High School versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Trumbull.
Okay, thank you.
And in that case, as you may recall, they wanted to install lights on the football field. The football field had been moved behind homes that had actually been sold by the school to neighboring properties, and then years later, it was, they did move the turf field to right behind those homes, and they wanted to put in lighting that would allow them to have things on Friday and Saturday nights, and there were concerns raised about traffic. The lighting would shine into people's homes, the noise, and that sort of thing. And we ultimately went to, in the lower court in Bridgeport, the court sort of said, well, it meets all of the hard standards, so I'm going to deny the appeal. And then at the appellate court found that those so-called soft standards do apply to special permits.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, the courts are looking at that now, once again, and reviewing that body of law, but that is sort of the state of things at the moment.
Commissioners, any questions?
Not a chance.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment?
I would just like to once again thank the commission for your generous patience for hearing us.
Thank you, Attorney Reed.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment for the third time? Okay. So,
Well, at this point, as you can see by the agenda, unless Mr. Gagnon was going to state something.
Yeah, I just wanted to stand up here and thank the commission for their time and consideration of this project and your patience with me and the applicant. Thank you very much, and we look forward to being a important member of the community because we care about what we're doing and work hard to provide a solid product to the property owners and to be respectful of all the neighbors. So thank you very much. for your time and consideration.
So I do see our attorney for the borough, Ned Fitzpatrick, is on with us also. As you can see by our agenda, it does have our time constraints. We have used 55 days of 65 days of extensions at this point. And
Is the plan to close the hearing?
the plan would be to close the hearing. And
then
I just wanted to make sure that Jim Stewart, as I said before, will review
Yeah.
the report from Steve Trinkus from Trinkus Engineering, and will review this public hearing. He's going to be able to listen and see it. And he will be able to make any recommendations as staff to the commission, correct, Ned? If he
Yes.
sees there's
Now,
any new
is
information.
the applicant requesting an extension of the public hearing or not?
I don't believe so.
No.
It's my understanding that it would only be for a handful of days, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so no, we respectfully request that the hearing be closed. I don't have any other testimony or
That's fine.
or submission.
Very well.
So I'll accept the motion that we close.
You would just close it.
I can just
You don't
close
have to do a motion.
Oh, okay. All right, so then I'm
Need a motion.
gonna close the meeting on the solar farm for Bosco Drive,
The public hearing.
the public hearing, and the time is
See 7/12.
7/12 on January 19th, 2022. Officially closed. All right. So Jim will review everything, then make his comments, and then,
He could provide, yeah, he said he would provide information
All right.
back to you
okay,
to, if he saw anything, and he hadn't had a chance to see
that's fine.
the response
Okay.
from Steve Trinkus.
All right,
That if he saw anything there, he would report back.
okay. All right. Everybody good? All right.
Will we be able to talk to Jim?
Yes,
Question him?
because Jim is staff,
Right,
so he can present to staff to you.
Right, the
And
next
give you
meeting.
any, yes.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yes, he can respond to
all right,
anything that he sees that he might have missed.
right.
If he thinks so.
All right.
So if you want,
So let's go to,
we do have Tim and Dave.
yeah, let's, say it again?
So, we're all set, no more discussion on our situation, the hearing is closed, and vote next month is the thought process?
I don't know, I can't say for sure that the commission would vote next
Oh,
month.
I did not mean to presume to a
Yeah.
vote. The next time we'll be having this discussion will be next month. I did
Yes.
not mean to presume that there will be a vote. Okay.
Yeah, and I think they'd like to hear if Jim Stewart has anything more to say.
Okay. Understood. Yeah, I was not trying to be presumptuous,
Yeah.
assuming the vote. No. But we're good for a month.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we wanted to go to the old business C for Tim and Dave, have been here for a while.
Okay.
Allow them to speak on
Sure.
250.
Come on up, guys.
Give me 1 second, to get set here.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is David Hughes, professional engineer, registered land surveyor. I have a revised or updated survey plan. Properties are- Nope, no solar panels on this job. I just want to hand this out so everyone can take a look.
While he's handing, anybody that's leaving the building, just make sure you push the door behind you downstairs. Or just, yes.
Has anybody had a chance to review this here, or is this the first time anybody's seen it?
This is the first time we're seeing it, but I have spoken with Dave in regard to this.
last May, we came before the commission presenting a site plan. I have 11 by 17s if anybody wants one. And the discussion was pretty much regarding a few different phases. One was planting some landscaping in the residential buffer, also some, I think if I take a step back, one of the issues was some excavation was done on the site without a permit, all right, and then the owner, Tim, had, I believe, put an application in, and Ed wanted to see a plan of what we were proposing. So we had some clearing, and some topsoil was taken off the site, or at least stripped. So the plan that we presented last May showed modifying the slope to a 2-to-1 because it was steeper, and that was something that Wayne Zaroli wanted us to do. And also the commission, before granting any additional improvements to the property, which would have been a garage or the paint booth, because the owner of the property was looking to put up a paint booth for his auto body business, was to be able to stabilize the slope, make it a 2-to-1 slope, also install the chain link fence with private screening, and also landscape the property in the buffer. I believe it's a 40-foot buffer, is that correct, Vince? And also stabilize the slope with vegetation. So since then, everything in terms of the slope, creating a 2-to-1 slope or less, is shown on your plan, has been done. The plantings and the chain link fence have been installed. The only thing that wasn't done was planting vegetation in terms of grass seeding. The owner of the property ran out of time. I spoke with him in late October, and he was having some issues with his contractor. So the only thing that hadn't been done, according to what the commission was looking to get done as part of phase 1, is vegetation in terms of grass vegetation on the slope. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
Well, yeah, I just had a couple of things.
Okay.
Obviously, most of the commissioners were here. I'm not sure if AJ was, I think you were here as an alternate back then, and obviously Santana was not. But when we first approved the plan, it called for a white vinyl fence along the back. We understand it was an issue to be able to get.
Yes, it was a white
panels.
vinyl.
So it wasn't chain link, it was a white vinyl fence, and there was different trees that were going along back. That was some of the first things that I saw.
Yeah,
So I said, well, that's not quite matching up to what we approved. So that's my first thing on that. And then we saw a lot of excavation going on. We weren't quite sure how much was going on at that point. I did go out to Tim, and I understand, Tim's not a surveyor, Tim's not, you know, he's not
an excavator.
Right, he's not the person who's trying to do whatever he thought he was doing correctly. But in my conversations with Tim, I got the opinion that he was thinking this was a working document, that we could be changing as we go. And I'm like, that's not how it is. If you are going to start changing things, you should be letting us know as to what's going on. We did approve.
It was more of a remediation plan.
Right. But we did approve at that time that the bank would be taken care of. We'd get an answer back on that, and then we'd look at the building being done, the seating and stuff like that. My concerns were, when I saw the excavation, was how close you were getting to the back property line. And I saw that that bank was getting close to that 15-foot minimum that we allow.
Okay.
And I was concerned about how much dirt was removing. So one of my, and I'll look back, I did my minutes here from October and November. You were not here, Dave, but Tim was here. And just a couple of things that I brought up in the October meeting that Tim came. And the 8-foot chain link fence, have green screen for more privacy of neighbors. That was presented to us. I thought that was, we agreed that wasn't a bad thing on that. And I'm not saying anything that Tim has done has been a bad thing, but We asked about the 2 rows of green giant arborvitaes on the bank. 12 more were delivered, or 12 more delivered next Wednesday, which will be installed. Has that been done? So those were all finalized. So these are the things that he came to us in October and mentioned to us. I also believe at that point, the screening on the fence has now been finished at this point now. Because at that point, had not been finished. This was October. Tim explained it's not up yet, but then that is now done, you're telling me. And I asked about the drainage on the top and the bank. I saw pipes getting put in the bank, drainage pipes. And that was not on our initial plan. Not necessarily a bad thing, but we're understanding that water was coming out of that hill. That was the sole reason why we had a water issue going on here. So I asked, well, we've got to get that on the plans. And then I further went on, Tim will come before the commission in November with his engineer. And I explained he could work on finishing the fence, planting the trees, and grading the slope to 2 to 1. The drainage was discussed in detail about the drainage that we saw up there. I'm just going into the facts of how we got to this point for some people that may not have been here. We also questioned, it says, Tim also had temporary drains in around the driveway. It was questioned why he states they are temporary. So again, we were trying to understand, well, what's a temporary drain compared to what's something that's going to be there permanently?
Yeah, I think the catch basin that's in the gravel parking area is a permanent drain.
Which is shown on the plan.
Right. Also on the plan is a curtain drain that runs from the northwest corner along the neighboring driveway and runs around going back south towards the catch basin. So that was installed. Yeah. And it's a curtain drain, it's picking up water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we knew was necessary.
But we do have some water coming off of that slope. We do have some groundwater bleeding out. Obviously, when the vegetation gets planted in the beginning of, or middle of April, that's gonna resolve some of that problem. Okay.
So
That is shown on the plan, though. The curtain drain is shown on the plan right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not talking about the French drain, you're talking about the curtain drain.
Both of them.
Okay.
Both of them. The French drain up above is shown
Okay.
on the current plan, and so is the,
Well, I see the French drain, and I see where the curtain drain is, because that's something we had discussed with Tim prior, and said, yes, and you can connect it down to, so we understand all that. The French drain, I'll ask about in a second.
Yep.
Then November came, and at that point, Jim Stewart and I had met with Tim out at the property, just to discuss what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we asked to be able to have you come, put on writing, start telling us what's going on. Jim was concerned about the amount of material that was being taken off the property at that point, whether it was going to hit to the point of a special permit being needed, which would be 1,000 cubic yards. And we weren't able to really figure that out.
I think it's important to let the commission know that we did talk with Wayne
Yes.
about taking material off the site.
Previous to this.
Right, previous to this, to make sure that we can maintain the 2-to-1 slope or create it, we could take some material off the site. So Wayne said, as long as you don't exceed 1,000 cubic yards, you're fine. So that's why we were asked by Ed to put the volume that has been taken off the site on your plan, which I believe is 728 yards.
Right now, it's 728. And I'll ask a question about that after.
That's fine.
And then we asked him to have his engineer, which would be you, come present to us. We understood there was a timing issue going on. You and I had spoke about that. And so that gets us to this point here. I wanted Tim to be able to finish the fencing, finish the stuff, get the slope grading, get all that set. Meanwhile, Tim had come to us talking about what he wanted to do. He wanted to see if he could get his paint booth up and all that, but we said no at that point. That was, I believe, in October that we said, because Wayne Malicki was still chair at that point.
Probably November and December as well.
Yeah, so that's when he came before us, and nobody came before us in December because of the timing.
Yeah.
At that point. So that's how we've gotten to this point. I will ask, the 728 cubic yards of material, will there be more taken off, or is it now done? You have existing stockpiles being shown.
There's a couple of small piles. At this point, what we are hoping we can do is satisfy last May's request of the commission to do A, B, and C, fencing, plantings, slope stabilization, and 2-to-1 slope.
Yeah.
And then come April 15th, we'll be able to plant vegetation on that slope, stabilize it even more. In the meantime, we want to be able to put together a site plan to put isolated new garage and have that come before the commission. And obviously, we wouldn't be starting that garage until the vegetation was stable on the site. So that's what we're looking to do. Looking to move out of phase 1 and start the design of phase 2. Come before the commission, probably not next month, but probably the month of March, which means it'll probably take us at least a couple of months to get approved. And during our approval period, we'll have the vegetation on the slope.
Which is something you and I had talked about.
And Tim is on board.
Yeah,
He's
and-
ready to go. So
And I
that's-
will say this, is that in my conversations with Jim Stewart about this, we never necessarily had an issue with the way the slope is right now. That we thought it was working. Our concerns were how much material came off and what are the other things that we have seen. Now I'm gonna get back to the French drain, okay?
Yep.
Previous to this all happening, that was all woods and it was this, that. So
Previous, you're going back to the beginning.
to before we got involved in this, because we saw activity going on
Sure.
back there.
Right.
And again, there was a time when I met with Tim 2 years ago, or maybe longer, that there was a site plan that was approved for expanding the parking area. And I told him what that was, and I think Tim just went a little further and started going with removing the trees and everything like that. My question is, the French drain was never proposed before.
I didn't know it was in until I did the survey a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so what I'm saying is who put that in, when did it get put in, who gave the authority to put that in?
Probably Tim's contractor who decided that that was a good idea. That's my guess.
So when we're
We
looking
can ask
back at,
Tim, Tim Beckler. That was his decision to do, yes.
okay, so that goes back to one of the things I was stating, that if you're gonna be making changes to the plan,
Should be asking
you should
somebody.
be telling us what you're doing.
Yep.
Um,
Understood.
And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but we all know there's water coming off of there.
Right.
Jim Stewart and I have looked at that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, after Tim is done doing all the development that he wants, the French drain up on the top of the hill by the chain link fence is actually gonna be a positive. It's just that they did it without asking anybody, so.
So, my only other thing is when I was there previously, I did see a pipe getting installed on that embankment,
Okay.
and yet I don't see it on the plan.
Pipe getting installed on the embankment. What do you
I
mean
was
by
there one time, Tim, and I said to you, what is that drain pipe that's up at, not, yeah, it was near the
Are we talking
top.
about the French drain? Yeah. Talking about the same,
Well, I didn't know if that was the French drain or what it was, because I was told that was gonna connect on down. I don't see
yeah,
that
that makes
connected.
sense, that would be the French drain.
Okay, and
It's
but
not
is it-
connected yet.
It's not
Not
connected,
connected.
because we had discussed stopping it. Okay. So you will be, so on your revised plan, you're going to be showing us the connection?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think Tim has somewhat of a partnership with the site contractor, and I think that the site contractor is leading him in directions that we probably wouldn't necessarily lead him without having commission's approval. So, but his partnership was a trading of labor. Can you fix my truck, and I'll do your site work. So I'm not justifying what was done. You know, last May we came in and Tim apologized for all the work that was done, and we did everything we were supposed to do with the exception of adding the curtain drain or the French drain, which at the end of the day will work in a positive, will be a positive thing, but it's there.
So in an answer then, on December 2nd, I issued a notice or a letter to Tim in regard to our section 42 earth excavation, fill and grading, to our zoning regs. And what I simply, at this time, are requesting that you provide a current site plan of your property showing the following: any drainage pipe installation and location on the property as such. I believe you've done this.
Yes, that's a survey that was done a couple weeks ago.
Yes. I also asked any installed fencing and landscaping activity in the required 40-foot buffer area to be to a residential zone. I asked you to show me what was going on there, because again, this was different than what was on the original plan we approved. I wanted to see what's now been done. And again,
Yeah, there were some variations.
my concern was, we have a regulation that you cannot be within 15 feet of a property line. And I wasn't sure, I wasn't gonna climb up a money embankment to measure myself. I'll let Dave do that.
There you go.
And
But
put that in.
each planting symbol represents an actual tree that's been planted, so that.
Which is on the plan that you're
Right, so you
showing.
can actually count how many trees.
But again, if you look at the plan we approved, it was different in the type of tree. And so I just wanted to get current. And then the final thing, any ongoing excavation location activity for the removal of earth material, and calculate the amount of earth material that has been removed from 251 Rubber Avenue, Dartmouth, Connecticut, since you received a site plan modification approval for your property at the May 19th zoning commission meeting. He's done that. Tim did stop when I asked him to stop, and Dave has provided us with the 728-foot number at this point.
So the stockpiles that we have on site right now are probably less than 150 yards. And we're not gonna move any of that material. What we'd like to do is come in with a design for this separate garage and all the bells and whistles, get it approved, plant the vegetation on the slope, and then if we need to move some material on or off the site, it'll be shown on that new site plan.
So the plan that we approved back then, I know you don't have it in front of you.
I have 11 by 17.
Okay, if you want to
Sure.
give that to them. The second one of it, and that's where you'll be able to see how here,
I don't have the second.
different type of,
Only the first.
different type of trees, and it made reference to a different type of fence. I wanted to get current on that. It did show the potential of buildings. It's my understanding that any buildings that you might build might be in a different location, which is fine. It's something to bring back to us to remodify the plan you presented to us last May, which is the way we should do it. And then,
We do show it on the garage that we want to, yeah, it said future.
it said future phase, but it was not part of this approval,
Absolutely not.
which is what I wanted to stress
That's
on
why,
that.
that's why we're looking for your blessing to start the design and be able to get the design done, so in the spring, after the vegetation of the slope, we can start construction.
Right, and this, that'll be up to the commission here. And again, our site plan modification approval that I sent out from the May 19th meeting, conditions, phase 1 and phase 3 as depicted on the site plan are completed prior to phase 2 paint-proof buildings being operational. Compliance of phase 1 and phase 3 must be in accordance with the Borough Land Use Office and staff, and a monthly reporting to the Naugatuck Zoning Commission. That's what we agreed to in May of 2021.
Correct.
And my understanding is you'd like to change around the buildings a bit.
Yeah, the only difference is I don't think we're gonna have that small paint booth, we're gonna go with the
Which
garage.
you'll take that off.
Right.
And then, again, our agreement still is that you will meet phase 1 and phase 3, which is the landscaping buffer up there and
Absolutely.
spread seed, topsoil disturbance.
Correct. So at this point, the only thing, the seed is the only thing that hasn't been put down,
Correct.
for obvious
Yeah.
reasons.
Now I can say I'm done. I don't think there's anything we have to necessarily approve. This was, again, an update that we've been asking for.
We just want to make sure that we can move forward with the next phase as well. I think that's, we've done everything we said we were going to do. We have one last bit that we couldn't do because it was the end of October by the time we had the resources and we knew that the seeds weren't going to do anything.
Yes, so I don't expect, there's no reason for you to come in February. there's
Well,
not much
I'm not
going
gonna
on.
have the site plan done.
Right,
until
that's what I
March
mean.
anyways.
If you want to come back in March with a revised site plan, then the commission, you know, that's just a new update to us.
Okay.
And then we'll have hopefully answers on the setting, the seating and the other stuff.
Okay, that's fine. As long as we can move forward with the design, we're fine.
If that's okay with the commission.
Feels good? Beautiful. All good?
All right.
Good.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you,
Thank you, Ed.
thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right. Go to the livestock.
That's our last thing.
All righty. Commission discussion to review the livestock poultry regulations in the Norfolk zoning regulations applicant Borough of Naugatuck.
Yeah, so as you guys know, you closed the public hearing last month. And we talked about some of the wording. And on December 16th, our meeting was the 15th, on the 16th, I went in, while it was still fresh in my memory, I tried to make any updates that I saw on it. You're welcome to read through this now as to what I remembered from that meeting and if there are any changes. Otherwise, it would be, I guess, the next step would be to go forward.
You didn't incorporate those comments into the
I did.
update? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
this is updated based on that meeting.
Okay.
Now, I'm trying to remember back a month, if I'm to tell you exactly which things I changed. I will try my best to remember that. I think it was just some of the wording that we used. But if there's anything in particular that you, I mean, we can go through it one by one. If you want, on the standards.
Well, I just have a lot of questions and, you know, points that I wanna,
So why don't we jump right into the questions? Okay.
okay. First of all, is there any reason why that animal control isn't doing this regulation or an ordinance?
Because
Animals go right under animal control, and that would take that off of your plate, and they're more trained to deal with it.
they state to me that it's a zoning violation. Because our current regulations require 3 acres of land.
So if we change that, that's gonna make a difference?
It
Or
would no
no?
longer necessarily be a zoning violation on some of these properties now, based on the size of what we're looking at. So if there was an issue in regard to how the animals are being maintained, I think that would be under animal control officers. I also think that if there is a health issue, at that point, I think the Garden Valley Health District would be able to respond.
Yeah, I think one of my thoughts is that you have these, at least 2 other entities, Naugatuck Valley Health District as well as Animal Control, and we don't really know what they can handle about this ordinance or this regulation, and yet we're changing it. I think it'd be helpful to know what part they play in it, and that, I mean, we might even write that into a regulation, you know, according to animal control, or we did once with the Naugatuck Valley Health District. But it just, I know that some places have this under animal control, and just wondered why we didn't. But again, it'd be interesting to know.
It may
those
be,
other-
but again, they could simply state you can't have it. And that's an answer I do get quite a bit, is that we don't have to do anything. They're illegal. It's a zoning violation to have chickens on a property that's less than 3 acres of land.
Right, but do they do anything if it's a 3-acre property?
I think it would fall under if it's an issue with cruelty, yes. I mean, there are people that have horses, and
Right, and I think that's my.
the maintaining of them, I think, would fall under animal cruelty. I mean, I think it would be no different than people that have too many dogs, and they go in and they find that the dogs are malnourished and not being taken care of.
Mhm.
I think that's I think that's the type of extent that animal control would have here, as to how the chickens are being taken care of.
Okay. Well,
By the family.
it might be,
Or by the
just to know.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things that was mentioned that we're going through from 3 acres to a half an acre, which is a huge change. And, you know, the thought was that, well, we could, if it's not working out, we'll just we'll go back and change it. It's really difficult to have half acre and then say, okay, no, we're gonna go back up to an acre or 2 acres or whatever. Once we go down that low for acreage, I think it's gonna be a hard time to change it and go back up. It'd make better sense, I think, to decrease the lot size from 3 acres to an acre and a half or an acre rather than all the way down to a half acre. Also, we never had a conversation about the slaughtering of chickens. And I think in the regulation says purpose of eating the meat or the eggs, but we're not addressing slaughtering at all. And, you know, people can slaughter anywhere right outside the coop, or do you have to have a special, I mean, there's a lot of hazards with slaughtering, as well as if you're, you know, in a butter and your kids are out playing in their yard and they're slaughtering chickens, you know, I think there's just conversations about slaughtering. And I honestly don't know what the healthy or an accepted way of slaughtering is. I don't know if people take their chickens to a butcher that does this. I don't know, but we didn't talk about that at all, but it's indicated that we're allowing it, but without any rules about that. And also, we're talking about roosters, and you can't have roosters, but we've also been told that you don't know that you have roosters until they grow bigger or something. But what are people, and it was kind of a joke of, you know, when I asked what happens to the roosters, oh, you know, the fox will get them or whatever. But in all seriousness, we're telling the homeowners that they have to do something with them, but what do they do with them? I mean, what are the options of getting rid of roosters? Because if we're going to have that many people getting chickens, we're going to have roosters. What are we expecting people to do? And do people know what to do with these things, you know? Also, there has been no mention of rear lots. Now, a rear lot could end up with a chicken coop in their front yard. Right? A rear lot,
No.
backyard, yeah.
Well, hell, they still have a front yard.
Coop.
The interior lot still has a front yard.
Right, so the front house that has a coop in their backyard means it ends up in the rear lot's front yard.
I understand what you're saying, so.
So we're not talking about rear lots, and I think that's important to think of.
Yeah, just talking about the.
You're talking about the
house
front
ends up
yard,
in the
not the rear
backyard.
lot.
Right, so a house will have a rear, the coop in their rear, and it ends up being, could potentially end up being in the front yard of the rear lot. That could be a problem. We didn't define enforcement of this, and I think maybe it's something that we don't often do with our regulations, just that you're supposed to obey the regulations, but especially if this goes to a half acre and a lot of people are getting chickens, there's going to, you know, there's going to be a lot of enforcement. So I don't know if we're going to define that in the regulations at all.
Well, I think it would fall under the zoning enforcement procedure for violations, as there is now. we would have to do it no matter what. Even, you know, we would have to go through the process of issuing a cease and desist and removal of the poultry or whatever the animal is, and we go through our process with that, with citations.
Would there be any different fining or amounts of fining with this particular application?
I don't know if you can do that. It would be a zoning violation, and a lot of zoning violations have certain state statute dollar amounts.
Right.
Whether it's.
I'm just,
Yeah.
my thought is we're talking chickens rather than a shed.
Yeah, I think it's still considered a violation, whether it's a shed or whether it's,
That
Okay.
falls under land use, you know, what you
Yeah.
have to do.
Right, I just didn't know if it should be different with
yeah, and I don't know if it can be.
Okay. During the public hearing, there were conversations about things like, everybody wants this, so many people already have chickens, so we should just regulate it to what the people want. Some of the conversations were based on Facebook conversations that, you know, one comment was made that, you know, it's all over Facebook. And I find this concerning. Reviewing how the commission came to reviewing this regulation, it was brought forth by a Burgess who had conversations with people, whether it was Facebook or in person or a combination, it doesn't really matter. But the fact is that that happens. And even you talked about people coming into land use, talking about people wanting chickens. And that's good for the commission to know where it's coming from. But the whole point of who we are as a commission is the public hearing. So a lot of things could be said out there, things could be all over Facebook about something, but if people are not coming to the public hearing to address what was all out there, then we don't know. And to regulate something or change something because of everybody wants it, it's all over Facebook, I think we can end up going to a dangerous zone if we're going to allow Facebook and people that aren't coming to public hearings as part of our public hearing. You know, if we're going to, you know, say that people go into land use and they want this, but not have the opportunity to talk to them, not have the opportunity to question them, not have the opportunity to know where they live, that's a disservice to who we are as a commission and having public hearings to make decisions. So that said, when you think about this, all these people want chickens, non-log families want chickens, yet we had less than 10 people talk to us about, and one of the things I said, and I mentioned it before, that I wanted to learn. I don't know about chickens. I need to learn about who, you know, what you want, what you do, how it works, and everything else. Yet we had less than 10 people, I think it's 9 people that, and one was about bees, talking about chickens. And of the people that spoke, half of them were extremely strongly opposed to having chickens and changing the regulation. So I think that should play a part in any decision of change.
I will agree with you that any communication on Facebook, and if any of during a public hearing especially, if any of our commissioners took part in any conversation, that's ex parte communication. You can't do that. You have to rely on what comes before you here.
Correct.
And the funny thing is, today I received 2 comments, and I had to tell both of them that I could not present them to you. And they said, oh, well, I was told on Facebook you were still taking comments. I said, no, we closed the hearing in December
Right.
15th. It was ample opportunity to come prior to that.
So, you know, that's that's the perfect example, you know, as I said, if you block out all of that, you know, all that bad stuff, we heard from 8 people about chickens. And we're looking to completely change the regulation from 3 acres to a ½ acre. And I'm not against changing the regulation, but with the standards that we as a commission use to make those changes.
Yeah, and I think the people that didn't come forward already have chickens and already not supposed to have chickens. I think that's a huge thing. And that's, so, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but, I mean, but go ahead, continue.
And that's basically it, you know, I just, again, we're talking, you know, in a town of over 31,000 people and changing, majorly changing an ordinance or regulation. And, you know, based on 9 people who commented, I think it's probably not wise to do. And as I mentioned before too, I think we're swinging that pendulum from, you know, way over here to way over here. So and just to the, you know, if you go through the regulation that the way you had it, I had some changes about that too. Again, slaughtering, I think, is an issue to talk about. And I don't know what is a healthy, safe, acceptable way of slaughtering chickens, and I think that needs to be in a regulation.
No, I don't think it does, but, I mean, Neil, what do you think about the regulations here? Are you
The only
okay
one I
with-
agree with is about the slaughtering. That should be addressed, but as far, if I had chickens and I knew I was breaking the zoning, I wouldn't show up either. And I think there's a lot more than 9 people in town with chickens, and I think this ½ acre thing is only gonna make them less non-conforming, right?
Yeah.
That's.
But these are working on assumptions. The public hearing is to work on the facts,
I
not
think
assumptions.
we're beating this thing, we've been on this thing for months, you know.
Yeah.
We gotta make a decision.
Yeah,
Gee. But the
AJ.
slaughter thing is huge. You're right.
I don't recall in any of the other town regulations that we saw that mentioned anything about slaughter. That's maybe one of the reasons why we never brought it up. It just never came to us. It never
Yeah,
came to our mind.
yeah, I never.
When we started looking at this months and months ago.
That one girl who did end up coming in here, I felt like she spoke for many people that didn't come forward. I thought she brought up some good points about where we are, and we're surrounded by Bethany and Oxford and Prospect, who all those towns are allowing that sort of
Right.
thing, and they're rural, a little bit more rural than us, but people like Naugatuck, and they just feel, I mean, they're just a different generation now on how they do things.
But again,
and
we're
sustainability.
talking about people that didn't testify, and I think we
But
really
yes.
have to be, yeah,
She
but
did for more than just herself.
but you're saying that a lot of people are saying this, and they have to, we cannot let Facebook be our extra public hearing piece. I think
Well,
that's
I'm
dangerous.
not going by Facebook, I'm going, but she actually showed up what she didn't know she could show. She showed up and she spoke, for many people, not just herself, and not from Facebook. I think she has probably a group of friends and they all,
I
Right,
will
but
say
Kate
this.
didn't come to,
because she was the one who showed up to do it. I think she was the one who was brave enough. Not everybody likes to get up and speak. I think people are afraid to.
there's always letters, again, we cannot mess with
But then you
the
could have
public hearing.
addresses like Rich said, and I think they would be afraid that now they're gonna come after me.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna have to.
I think we're way overthinking this thing. You know, I mean, it's.
When was it on Facebook? What was that, issue? You saw it on Facebook?
No, I'm not part of the groups that
Oh.
do it, but I just know it gets commented, and that's what I've been told.
They comment on everything, they comment, and they don't, a lot of the stuff is so not true, not right,
Typical Facebook.
typical, and I read it once, and one person made a comment, call land use. I was shocked, finally one person said, call land use to find out what's going on.
But again, this isn't a Facebook issue, this is a decision by you guys.
Right.
I found one thing interesting, that the person that was on, I believe in the December meeting, who was championing the effort, saying positive, should be done. I went back and looked at the size of his property, he does not qualify. I don't know if you realize that.
You mean at the half acre?
Yeah. His property card puts him under half acre. And I'm like, oh, I don't want
He's
to.
probably already got him.
Fuck.
He's getting there.
But Neil, what else?
That's all.
All right, AJ.
That's all. I want to vote on it.
Yeah, let's just
That's
go.
that's my
So
recommendation.
this was brought before the commission by Burgess. Actually, Rocky's on the horn right now. And I don't know if he's allowed to speak right now, but and I don't remember the exact number, but he was speaking on behalf of a certain group of individuals who had come to him. Is that the same as what she's referring to? So Rocky is a representative, and I'm making this number up, please don't take this as, but like, let's say 20 people, okay, have approached Rocky and said, hey, we really want to do chickens. Rocky, as a Burgess and a representative for those 20 individuals, came before the board and asked for this change. Is that considered a Facebook thing, or is Rocky representing 20 people?
No, I think what it was is Rocky doesn't have chickens. He had seen it, or he had read, or whatever he did, that people were interested. He decided to take it upon himself to present a potential regulation to the commission. That's all he did.
So he did, okay, I understand that.
So
Okay.
both he and Jan threw it out there to let everybody know, we brought this forward, you guys need to now go to the public hearing and testify, which is how the process works.
Right.
And unfortunately, Rocky and Jan's encouraging of other people, didn't really pan out for whatever reason. It didn't, so we were left with not a lot of public comment. And you have to have public comment in order to change things. Otherwise, we're a board unto it ourselves making decisions, and it's not good.
Yeah, I will say that probably the Facebook part of it was more about publicizing to get out and make your opinion known to us. And they decided to make it known to each other. Now, I'm not talking about Rocky and Jan, I'm talking about people on, it was that topic at that time.
I mean,
For them to discuss.
so that was my question, but as far as my thoughts, I'm more inclined to agree with Neil. We have several towns directly around us, as you had mentioned, that have a much more lax requirement. I'm not saying that the half acre is necessarily correct. I know that that number was chosen as part of a review of the Naugatuck properties. As we are a pseudo-rural area, there's not a lot of homes in Naugatuck that can hit the 3 acre mark if they even wanted to have chickens, which was one of the reasons this was brought up, was the fact that it is a more sustainable lifestyle that people are living. It's something that people prefer. We're looking to attract more residents to Naugatuck. And that's where the half acre came from, because that allows for a larger percentile of the population to have them. I do agree on the slaughter thing. I think that's something that we would have to find a way to put into the regulation, because last thing you want is to see a headless chicken run by while your kids are outside, and it happens. If people aren't controlling the chicken properly, it will happen. So it's anyway. But that's pretty much it for my comments.
Same thing, slaughtering chickens. I could remember when my dad cut a chicken's head off and it rained.
No, I know.
And I was amazed.
We did it.
And I could see it running up the
We
street.
did it both ways.
Yeah.
That or you just snap it.
Yeah,
just
well,
walk around.
I mean, but
It went along the way.
Yeah.
like Eileen's point, though, that there's humane ways of doing it. There's more proper ways, and I don't know how we play that, but there,
Yeah.
Is that when animal control or something was coming into play?
I have no idea.
Is what?
With animal
If not,
control,
animal
say somebody
control,
saw
no.
that somebody was,
If
How could
someone
they
is
tell you how to
treating a
kill a
dog
chicken?
wrong, animal control controller gets involved in it.
Right, but we're putting it in the,
As far as slaughter, though,
says
if somebody
purpose
sees a
of eating
slaughter,
the
they may
meat.
take that to
we're
animal
we're
control.
giving permission. That it's in your updated, revised things, purpose of eating meat, which is automatically, you can slaughter it. So either we're going to not allow slaughtering or have the conditions of how you can.
You can't not allow it, I mean, it's part of the whole process.
Yeah,
of
they
having
gotta-
chickens.
There are people that do it.
Yeah, so,
We haven't had any complaints on that. I will say right now, have you had complaints about
No.
that? So we have a lot of people with chickens now who don't have, they're not legal, but we've never had anybody call to say they're slaughtering their chickens next door.
It's difficult to write a perfect regulation.
yeah.
It's extremely difficult, because there's always things and change in the times. I can only imagine that 40, 50 years ago, people were raising chickens all over the place in areas, and Ricky and I had aunts,
Oh, yeah, we did when we were kids.
killed them in the yard,
Oh, yeah, just.
and hung them up to dry.
They do it in New Haven.
Put 'em in
New Haven
boiling
is
hot
allowed-
water.
New Haven allows a
Yeah.
postage stamp to have chickens. And I
Right,
know
Haven
for a
allows
fact,
everybody to have
I
chickens.
know for a fact that they do the slaughter right there.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
necessary, but I don't know what that regulation says or how that's handled. But I do know-
We almost based it on New Haven, because they allowed everyone to do it. We considered that. We did not see anywhere where it talked about the slaughtering.
So I think it's something we need to find out. I mean, there's gotta be an
Well, I think
accepted
what,
way
yeah,
of slaughtering.
yeah, I mean, I would like to, maybe add the slaughtering or look into it, but I wanna get this off the table, so I wanna make a motion to, or I wanna make a motion to create. Go ahead.
There's still, I mean, that slaughtering, because we're saying you can eat the meat. Also, the third line down says use in any residential zone. That should have been changed because it's not any residential zone.
Third line down.
What then?
I have the revised 12/16/21. Is there a different
Yeah, what-
one?
No, I'm asking, where on there are you saying?
It is the third line down.
Intent is, in the first paragraph.
Yes. Commercial accessory to residential use in any residential zone. It's not any residential zone.
The intent is to allow for the keeping of rabbit defined as any game that can be raised for the purpose of eating meat or including ducks or rabbits, but not guinea hens, capons, roosters, as a non-commercial accessory to a residential use in any residential zone.
You mean the non-mixed use zone, right? So like over, where they have the little neighborhood stores with an apartment above, we said not on those.
Yeah, I
Not
thought.
in a
Right, right, so the next line says, not allowed on mixed-use property in a residential zone.
Yeah, because we have some old, older.
Use and what we're gonna do, and not multis. Not a mixed use or a multi.
Backyard poultry are not allowed in a mixed-use property in residential zone.
I think we do reference, single family only somewhere on here. I thought I saw that.
On the second page, number one.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
but
single
it's,
single family residential, so it does speak to the multi-family. Not in the first paragraph, but it is in the regulation.
Under lot size and number of backyard, a single-family residential property must be at least 1/2 acre. It says single family.
right. But it needs to be clear here, because it's confusing. If you're gonna say mixed use, and it should be mixed use and not on a mixed use or a multi. That should be set there. It just needs clarification. Even if you're putting it in here, it needs to be reflected here also.
Okay, so we're having backyard poultry or rabbits are not allowed on a mixed-use property in a residential zone or in a multifamily property? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, remember. the-
Backyard poultry and/or rabbits are not allowed on multifamily or mixed-use properties. That's how it should read. And you wouldn't even need to put the residential use, residential zone there. You can keep that out because you address it later in the document. But if you're gonna put it there, then it has to be clear.
Because we had that long discussion, we were talking about, we'll see how this goes first, if we allow it
Mixed-use
later.
property.
In a multi, with a owner occupied. I know we said no, but I'm saying after if this goes well. Like I have 3/4 of an acre, I couldn't have it, I'm owner occupied with only family in the house.
And that was a key talking point from last month.
Right.
That's why it was removed here, just to allow us to move forward with this regulation and ensure that we're able to get this through this week, or this month.
Correct.
So, for example, we could do the following. The following regulation will govern the keeping of backyard poultry and is designed to prevent nuisances and prevent conditions that are unsanitary or unsafe. For the purposes of the regulation, backyard poultry is defined as chickens, hens, ducks, rabbits. Somebody mentioned quails. We never put this quails in here, so are we going to include quails or no? And then the other part, backyard poultry and/or rabbits are not allowed on multifamily or mixed-use properties. Failure to meet the standards listed below will result in enforcement action against the owner occupant of a property by the zoning enforcement officer, and the same is right there.
Is this the wording? I don't have it written, so is that the wording that I did, or is this all the?
No, that, part,
Revised wording,
yeah,
meaning the same thing, but clearer.
clearer, yeah. And are we gonna keep quail? I think that was brought up by Rocky in one of the public hearings. I mean, I hear that people are frustrated of how long this is taking, and for me, who was not thrilled about chickens, I want to learn more about it, I'm as frustrated as everybody else. But I do think that our regulations need to be clear and concise, so that when we're reading them and ZEO has to read and enforce them, it's because it's clear. Also, for people reading the regulations, so many of our regulations aren't clear. So clarity is important.
I have to admit, I agree with that, because we're the ones who get the call. And we can't interpret them, because they're so confusing. It's hard for the person looking online.
So you don't even have to put purpose of eating meat in this first paragraph. You can have a subsequent point or standard of slaughtering. And it
This is
can
what
go
I'd
under
like to
that.
do. I'd like to provide you with the Word document, because I can't remember everything that you're giving.
Here,
And-
I made a
And
copy
either
of,
you can go, or we can create a subcommittee and you guys can create it, because it gets difficult this time, trying to get
well,
everything in.
This-
as much.
Well,
This
you could
is-
just add that and then.
But she
Boy,
just clarified.
get it.
I actually, I just revised what I wanted, what I would have proposed.
Did it say the same thing in just different words, basically?
Well, yeah, but I did it based on, you know, my thoughts.
So this
But at
is,
least that first part, I think an acre and a half or an acre would be more acceptable rather than right down to half acre. Again, a lot based on what we heard in public.
one of the things, this is also based on what Ed gets calls on.
Right, but
So he
again,
goes out to
we
properties
have,
that are
we have to
small.
be very careful about what we're, I mean, yes, when you're having people that are in violation, well, there could be a whole bunch of other violations, not just the fact that they're having chickens in less than 3 acres. So it's really important that the public hearing be the process from which we make decisions and not all this other stuff. I mean, certainly an experience, but again, the experiences that you're having are violations, and it may be more than just not 3 acres.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm confused right now, I don't know where to go. We have a document, Lori started creating this document, I took it over, created this as it is right now, and now we have another thing to add into it, which has different amounts in it than we had before. So,
What about the wording with your amounts, but is this wording clear up top?
I do think that what I put is clearer.
yeah, it could be.
Where's your amount?
I just don't wanna go back again.
No, I wanna
And-
add that, make a motion and either accept it or not.
So just like rework the purpose, so basically Eileen has reworded the top
The
portion,
purpose
the
part.
purpose part, so it kind of clarifies the purpose of the regulation.
Well, and I clarified, as you see, I
Yeah, so as you've got here, the following regulation will govern the keeping, you know what, make copies of this.
No,
I
she
do
has
have-
extra copies.
Okay, because it's much easier.
I don't
to
have
register
enough for
this.
everybody, I don't think.
It is enough.
Okay, so the following regulation will govern the keeping of backyard poultry and is designed to prevent nuisances and prevent conditions that are unsanitary or unsafe. For the purposes of this regulation, backyard poultry is defined as chickens, hens, ducks, rabbits, and/or quail as non-commercial accessories. So are we talking about taking that part out, single-family residential property?
Well, I put
Or are
that
we
in.
stopping at the word quail?
She added single family, so it's clear up there that it's for single family.
Right.
only.
Right. And I put it in red
Okay,
just because it was different. Or-
right. Commercial accessory on a single-family residential property, so multifamilies would not be eligible.
And that's in the next line, so it's clear. Single family,
Okay,
next line, not multi, no mixed use.
so right now, we won't say anything about the 1.5 acre part.
Yeah, that's my stuff, my thing, so just so you know.
So backyard poultry and/or rabbits are not allowed on multifamily or mixed-use properties, okay? Failure to meet the standards, and that's the same line
You're right,
as what we
Yes.
had, so
yes,
I'll just say we're not worried about that part.
right.
So really, the only thing we have to discuss then, if we accept that, because I'm fine with that,
No, I added,
is the 1.5, no, I'm talking about the 1.5 acre. We just
Yeah.
get through the purpose at least.
oh, yeah, right,
The 1.5 acre part. So
Right.
that would be,
I wanna keep it at 45. I think-
well, the reality is we do not have that, an amount listed in the in the purpose here.
Right.
What are you talking about?
So when you look at the one I presented to you,
Yeah,
it doesn't have a size.
it does on the next page.
right.
I'm saying, but we can keep, we don't have to put it in this purpose.
Oh, I see what
Is
you're
what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
basically, it would be, I mean, this is what I would propose, but
Right.
if you kept it under the other standards that were already talked about, then you would just
We
take
go
that
through that.
part.
We just put a line through of 1.5 acres and it's
Correct,
the
that's what
exact
I'm
same
saying.
thing.
Right, we take that part out of the purpose.
Mhm.
It's- So if we take that out, and we use everything else that's there. Now we can go to the standards part.
and you highlighted, whatever you changed in there, you highlighted, Eileen?
No.
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 Okay.
No, it's
No.
completely different.
Yeah, she restructured the format.
I mean, the format is, I think, clearer. Lot size, number, roosters, enclosure, setbacks, drainage, what's not permitted, sanitation, slaughtering, and permits. That, and I put that in red, that you're not gonna require permits, but you're going to expect everybody to come in and say that they're, you know, doing what they're supposed to do in compliance. Well, if, I can't imagine anybody coming in to do that.
Well, let's
If they didn't have
let's take
to.
a look at each one. So, lot size, a single-family residential property must be blank in size to house backyard poultry.
So it would be the
Where do
half
we
acre,
have
that's
that?
what, yes. Everything, I think almost everything was in here, and I just highlighted it differently.
Yeah, well,
So she has it as item A, lot size, and the revised 1216 has it under, on the second page, item number 1.
right, that's what I was gonna say.
So the
We
only,
have
she
the
doesn't
same
have
thing.
square feet on there, which you wanted to put on just to make it abundantly clear the size. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's, yeah.
I put it on there based on what I see on the property cards that I can easily show something.
And I put in 6 chickens, because if you're starting with 1.5 acres, it should be more chickens. I think you have 5.
I have 5
Yeah, 5
at a half
chickens,
acre,
5 chickens for half an acre, and then
Right.
another additional 5 for every
Right.
quarter acre.
every quarter acre. So I just, when I did it, I tried to base it out that every quarter acre you got, you can add more.
Right, so
So if you
I,
have 0.75, you've got,
so I followed that, but,
No roosters allowed.
That says no roosters are not allowed. Does that mean they're allowed?
typo, doing it after work, before I got
I
here.
thought I was sleeping.
well, again, we had, number 3, at no time are roosters allowed or permitted on a property that's not designated as a farm in the Norfolk land use regulations. So the responsibility of the owner, tenant of a property to relocate any roosters from a property does not meet the Norfolk land use regulations.
So what is, so, Eileen's are a little bit shorter and clearer and not so wordy.
Yeah, a lot clearer. No offense.
Well, he started with what I did, and I just went through different town regulations.
No, I like this format.
You like which one?
I like Eileen's format.
And the thing was, she put about the slaughtering, it's no outside slaughtering, which is good, because you're not saying you can't eat your rooster or your chicken. You just don't do it outside. You could do it in a shed. You said
Right,
no
but I
outdoor-
did read something about if there's, there has to be a healthy way to slaughter, that if you're slaughtering perhaps in a shed and there's blood around or whatever, if it's not cleaned up or whatever, that would attract the rats.
And that would be then.
Well, that's covered by
then we
the,
tell them now because they're health district.
that's actually covered, taking care of that stuff. Storage and management of waste covers the slaughter remains. Because, I mean, how many people buy a turkey and throw the giblets and the neck and everything else just right in the trash? That's not, you know, in this instance, you're actually covering it better here than what people currently do with their turkey on Thanksgiving. So,
Can you eat a rooster?
it's good.
Who said that?
Tommy.
Yeah.
The only-
They
the other-
gotta eat them. I mean, it's the whole point of the chickens.
The other thing is the
Well, then
storage.
she puts no outdoor slaughtering,
Well-
that's not bad.
I think we have to leave that, because I think it's hard to approve something we're making all these changes.
It should always be a clean copy, it should always.
So basically, everything in the original that Ed wrote is in yours, just a different word.
I'm pretty sure I included everything.
Here it says, in Eileen's version for enclosures, says hens shall be provided with a covered,
Oh, that's-
predator-proof fence coop that is at least 6 feet in height, well ventilated, designed for easy access for cleaning. Actually, the only reason I saw this is because Ed and I actually had a discussion about
Yeah,
it
that's good.
today.
Cover.
The reason that the regulation is 6 feet high is because in some instances, people don't put covering over it, and that's not included in this side. They don't put some sort of fencing over the top of the coop.
Yeah, I have seen it where they'll have a large enclosure and they don't have a roof on the top, but it does keep that from flying out. 4 foot, some people have that chicken wire, and that's only 3 foot high. And I have seen chickens that will jump that, up to 6 foot. So my concern is that it would have to be covered even at 6 feet height, because that could be a large, some people make a large enclosure.
Right. And they need to be protected.
If they're small enclosures, I would think most people do cover them, because it's easy to cover them.
You mean the fence all around it, not just the coop, not
The
just the
coop area,
house.
right. So I have seen people that could have a 20-foot by 20-foot pen area. To cover 20 by 20, that's 400 square feet of.
Yeah, but don't they usually just have a little coop with a roof over it, so they go in their little house?
But we're talking about the enclosure, not just we're talking about the full enclosure. We did not require on the enclosure to be covered previously. This has nothing to do with the coop. This has to do with your yard where they're running around.
That's what she just said.
It's no different than a dog pen. If you
Right.
think of a dog pen, it's the same thing. The only difference is a dog pen, you have open air. In this instance, this regulation now puts a lid on it. So,
But do we want to make them put a lid on
You mean not have a roof? I mean,
it?
No.
I'm not talking about the coop. I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh.
about
the pen.
their pen area where they're, like I said, somebody could build a 20 by 20 pen area. That's 400 square feet. To cover that is a large amount of area to throw a roof on top.
I don't think there's any reason for a lid, as long as 6 feet's high enough to keep the chickens from becoming free range. I don't think there's any real reason to put a lid on it. If
Right.
the
Right.
owner is confident in, not having a loss due to falcons or anything like that,
Hawks, yes,
then
they put
that
something over
puts
top.
the responsibility on them if they choose to cover that 400 square feet.
Right, and some just put chicken wire over the top. Again, it's to keep things from
Right.
getting in.
yeah.
But just to keep it moving, I do like this format, but there's enough changes here that I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on the way this is written, because I don't agree with some of the things, like, for example, the acre and a half. I agree with Neil, and I think Neil said the half acre. The 5 chickens, the no lids not required. I mean, it's a good format, but I don't know if we can actually vote on this, and I hate to say that, but.
So you're saying not covered at all?
No,
So the coop itself, where the chickens reside in the evening,
Right.
where they sleep,
Right.
that's got a roof.
Right,
But when you have the pen itself, that outer enclosure where they come out to eat and drink and play, that area does not need a roof.
right. So should it be clarified? I mean, I kind of thought that it was covered their house part.
You were just thinking the coop itself, like the little chicken
Yeah,
house.
yeah. But if it needs to be clarified.
So who's gonna clean this up then?
I mean, if you want me to put in everything that is in here, numbers wise, half acre and, feet, I can do that and I can send it over to you. Why don't I do that? It'd be easier for you, because I already have it on my computer.
Yeah,
So I'll plug in these things and then send it to you.
okay.
And then everybody can be sent
Yeah,
that before
that's
the
good.
next meeting.
Good.
And the slaughtering part on on the one I have is fine the way it is,
Yeah.
without any more.
Shall be no outdoor slaughtering chickens.
Yeah, because if it gets to be a problem where there's blood and guts and rats coming, then they're gonna call the health district.
Well, I mean, and then they're in violation again of the waste management. So there's already a statement of waste, and then, and once a chicken is slaughtered, the feathers, the organs, the blood, all that stuff, that's waste, so that needs to be properly disposed of.
Do you want to add that to number 8, where you have an example of the combination of manure and bedding for the waste management? What you were just saying about the feathers and, or not
If you want to put some wording in there, you know, combination of manure, bedding, comma,
Under sanitation?
harvesting waste.
I think we also have to put, we discussed, and Jim Stewart remembers specifically saying that 1 cubic yard of manure is a lot.
For a chicken.
I
Yeah.
thought it said 2. I had
No,
2.
I have 1.
So we would put it down to 1.
We put it to 1.
Yeah.
1 cubic yard at any given time. We don't mention that in sanitation. needs.
I'll add that. I'll add 8 to H. Yes?
Correct, yeah, I think for that part. And you don't have in there location, as we did put in R8. We have that in our number 8, we have no case shall waste be located closer to the property lines than the minimum setback requirements for structures and enclosures for keeping backyard poultry. In sanitation, we do not, on H, you don't have that.
Yeah,
So-
I'll do all of 8 onto
Yeah.
H.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
If you put that in place and call it sanitation, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would it make any sense just to go through a couple of the key items one more time, just to make sure that whatever she's putting together, we can actually vote on next month? And what I mean by key items is, I don't know if you have to explain if this is a legal thing or not, but have people just really quick. Who, is the majority good for the half acre? Is the majority good for 1 acre? Is the majority good for, the not to exceed 1 cubic yard? Is the majority good for the 20 foot, you know, is there any like key items that Eileen raised that we just simply take an unofficial, I don't know how it works, but unofficial vote of some kind, so that way, when, whatever she's putting into the next one.
Yeah, it's the amounts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fine, that if everyone's comfortable with that.
Are you all comfortable with a half acre?
Yes.
Yes.
And I would say again, that we're not listening to people that had strong opposition. We've changed a lot with this whole regulation, but we're not even listening to the people who had strenuous objections for chickens. And I think that we need to listen to.
I think the one lady though who was talking about it and the chickens getting into her multi-family house, they wouldn't be allowed there anyways because the lot was smaller and it was a multi-family. And I think next door was the multi-family who had the chickens. So it wouldn't be allowed anyway, so Ed would have to enforce that.
You can't disconnect what people are saying. That's justifying what you think about what you said.
What she's saying, it wouldn't be allowed where she's located.
So she could then call zoning on the individuals for their chickens.
Right, she's in a multi-family zone. Her area is multi-family homes. You have a.
People can object. You can't take what people are saying and say, no, what you say is not relevant. What your comments are irrelevant. I mean.
Well, no, I'm saying it is relevant because we're not allowing it where she's located and she didn't want it.
You're discounting her strong opposition, and I don't think that's right.
Well, we heard a lot of opposition tonight about the solar farm too, and, you know, the way we vote is the way we vote.
Should be based on public hearing and all the
Well,
information.
But we're here to listen to the public, and we decide from within what we feel is right. I was
But
told
the-
that my first year here, you vote what you feel is right. And
Based on
I have to
public
support the
hearing.
half acre. That's me. Yeah, it's up to you guys now. Let's hear it.
Half acre.
Yeah, half acre is good. And you should put in there storage of the chicken feed. Should be in a
Oh,
container,
yeah.
predator proof. You know,
Should be
so the
put
rats
what?
ain't getting it.
That the feed is in predator-proof containers, so you don't end up with,
You feed the chickens whole corn or whatever. You
Okay.
gotta put it in some kind
So
of
number 3
container.
states that.
Yeah, but we're going.
Such buildings shall be constructed and all food products kept so as to prevent offensive odors and the presence of pests and predators.
I think what Tom is saying is it's missing on.
I'm just saying, we have a line
Okay.
as number 3, and we need to put that maybe under
D.
D, I was gonna say under the enclosure part.
Okay.
Include that in there.
I'm sorry, what number on the standard?
3,
3. Okay.
my question is on Eileen's, on number, on B.
I put 6 because
Yeah.
I was saying it was larger, but you have
So
5,
you
so I would
five,
put
yeah.
5.
Go back to the five.
How many did
Okay.
we buy? 6? When we go to Tractor Supply, how much is
No,
there?
it was 5, because we initially
Is it
talked
5, is
about
that
it.
why? Okay, that's how I just wanted to make
So you
sure.
go to 5 on that, and then for each quarter acre, are we going on the amounts that we had in this one, or,
Yeah, I'll add it.
okay, so the number would be the same,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't wanna list necessarily the quarter acre or the 10,890 square feet.
I don't need that we
I was
need to,
trying to
but
keep
it-
it simplistic, so I show a person, this is your property card. This is what it says you got for land. It says 10,800, and it says 0.25 acres of land. That's what's on the property card. I don't want them figuring it out. That's why I specifically pointed that out.
But it has quarter acre, right? It doesn't go by square foot. It goes by acre. So it says 0.23, 0.75. It doesn't say 10,000.
Right, but I was using that to math based on the acre. I figured, let's just cover every spot.
So when you say 0.25 or 0.5 acres and they say 0.39, we're like, well, okay, not enough.
Right, and the reality is we know that property cards aren't always necessarily correct. We've learned that over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, it's clear when it says for every quarter acre, you can allow 2 more, and that would be, I mean, that could fall under you of, that's not a quarter, it's less than a quarter, so you can't.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Yeah.
was trying to point it out, so it's everything like I said on the property card. So if you want to do that, and if 2 is the number instead of 3, it doesn't matter to me.
Two or three?
I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm fine with 2.
That's fine.
Okay.
Two it is.
So 2 instead of 3.
All right. What else?
Whatever, 2, 3, make no difference.
How about that 18-year-old?
Nobody's gonna complain
Can't
about
have-
one
the Younger
chicken.
kids can't manage chickens?
On D, enclosure toward the end, something that I read when I was researching some of this.
Is that a little old?
I don't think they should ever allow them out of the pen area.
I would
Wait,
agree
we're
with you.
talking about age. What's the age?
This says.
Over the age of 18.
18. I think letting them run free. Is that
Somewhere I
what you're referring
read
to?
that something about taking them out of the enclosure and for cleaning the whole area. And again, I don't know this, other than it makes sense that you would take them out to clean, you know,
No,
the
you just let
whole.
them out
In the pen
area, the pen area, and then you clean the coop.
The confusing part is the enclosure, the coop?
Yeah.
Or is the enclosure the whole thing? Is the enclosure their
I have no
pen
idea.
area? Picture, like you said, a dog run, and then you got a coop inside it.
Yeah, doghouse.
You're,
So when you clean, when you clean in the doghouse, the dog's not in the doghouse. You go in there, you clean everything up, you put down some fresh bedding, and then when it's time to clean the pen itself, you shoo everybody into the coop, lock the door, and clean up that mess. So, there's no reason, I agree, there's no reason that a chicken should be outside of the coop. 'Cause at that point, it becomes.
outside of the pen.
The enclosure rather, excuse me. And at that point, it violates the free range rule.
Right.
All right, so hens should not be allowed out of the enclosures. Enclosures. And that's it. Get rid of the rest. You didn't say anything about rear lots though. I do think that should come up. And my thought would be that would fall under you, because it doesn't always happen that way, that it would be in somebody's rear lot. And I'm a rear lot property owner, and a coop would be in my front yard, and I don't think that's acceptable.
What about with proper, enclosure, meaning trees? You know, like what we do with dumpsters? They have to be enclosed.
Right, but that would be a separate standard for rear.
You know what I mean? You know, when we have dumpsters on bigger plans, we have to have them enclosed and covered so we can't see them. Could we do something like that? Because we do have some yards like that. So if it's gonna be in our new front
So would
yard-
it be screening of the
Screening, that's
enclosure?
the word I'm looking for, screening.
Screening of the enclosure that would face
Well, oh, because it's only talking about.
to any property's front.
So how you got the-
So abutting properties.
Interior lots.
We had something like that somewhere. Because I distinctly remember you bringing up a conversation probably 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, where as part of the initial discussion, you wanted to make sure that the actual enclosure was not visible from the road. It had to be tucked behind the
Well,
house.
it had to be
blah, blah.
behind someone's backyard, but I think what Eileen is
Well, but,
saying.
no, but that feeds directly into her point where we were stating that we didn't want it to be readily visible from the front. And in this case, the screening should also apply to the back. Because if you have, you're not only blocking it from the neighbors on the left and the right, but you also have a neighbor in the back to consider.
But those are backyards to backyards.
No, it's backyard to front yard. So her house.
Right, in
she's
her case,
got, in
yes.
her case, but there's other houses like that too. It could be backyard to side yard, it could be backyard to backyard, it could be whatever combination. The point is that we require screening for the coop to be placed in an area where it's not readily visible from the road, so it's not, disrupting the neighbors on the sides, but there's no statement that same level of courtesy is applied to any individuals living behind or to the side of the property that may still have visibility.
Right, we never said anything about side yard, or, it had to be in the rear yard, that's all we said. So if you were living next to it,
Mhm.
your view from your backyard is gonna be of that coop potentially, but we said it had to be 20 feet off the property line.
Mhm.
I know the conversation you're talking about, and I think that's why we changed it to that rear lot and 20 feet.
Would the 20-foot rule be 20, because that 20 foot's all the way around, would that help for the rear lot folks as well? So it's gotta be 20 feet back from the back property line?
Well, it's still be in your front yard. I mean, I think the idea of screening, you
You
know,
can still see it.
makes better sense. But we have a lot of rear lot properties in town.
We do.
So I'm fine with screening.
Screening the back side of the enclosure
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
makes sense.
when there is an interior lot located behind the property.
Right.
Mhm.
What screening?
The back side,
Right, but what should be screening? A fence or trees, or does it matter?
I would think there'd be screening in the fence, or they could put a vinyl fence up that blocks it at that point, or a wood fence.
You can also have it as part of.
I don't think putting arborvitae's up would be,
No.
I don't think a vegetative screen would work. But I think you can get some type of thing to the back of your enclosure, and it could just be simple as a wood fence.
And you got
A
6 foot,
stockade fence or a vinyl fence, I mean.
you got 6 foot fence requirement on the thing, you can easily put that as well as, you know, if there's a back lot, then an additional 6 foot screening would be required.
Right.
And then
I
nobody's
mean, you
using
can
it.
buy screening that goes on it too, if you want.
Yeah, they got those little slats, you can slide in
Slats
there.
or
so.
the cover that goes over it.
Mhm.
Now I want some chicken. Colonel open yet?
Is there anything else?
No. Motion to adjourn.
I think that we've got it.
So next month, I think we'll have a clean copy for everybody.
I'll get it to you ASAP and everybody can see it.
Will you be here next month?
right away.
Yes.
Oh, you will be.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we got? No new business to discuss. Any new business? No. CEO report.
Should we bring up about the,
No.
Darcy? We have to start looking at, back in 2010, Steve McCary doing,
Oh, the aquifer.
so we found out that we've got to start doing stuff with the aquifer. And somehow the zoning commission, I guess, which was named by the town as the ones to oversee the aquifer protection zone, which we really only have it on Hayden Road. We've been contacted from the state now, and we've got to start doing something about that.
We have
So-
3 properties that are located within the watershed. So we have an aquifer, 2 aquifers, and we have some watersheds. And there's 3 properties within there that weren't properly registered with us. So Ed and I will go out there, we'll do a friendly call, and we'll send them a letter. We have to go inspect to make sure they're using best practices, whatever they are.
What, are they gonna clean them out?
No, they.
They might be doing nothing wrong, but the reality is we have to come up with some aquifer protection regulations.
Okay,
So the ones we have, they were supposed to be updated in 2010 or 11, but I have all samples. So we will start that, and we have to have meetings that are noticed like this, so it'll be before or after your zoning meeting. So,
It's just another task added on to us.
Commissioner comments, anything?
No, sir.
Now, did they ever do anything up on Highway Road with the dog training camp up there they got? Did they ever build a facility up there? Yeah. For the, up on
They didn't
top?
build anything, they have some pens that they have
yeah,
for
they
the
built the
dogs.
one big,
Well, I thought they were gonna build some.
they did build something, remember the big, like, barn thing, remember the cement floor?
Oh, yeah, they built that garage.
Yeah, whatever that is.
That was part
I
of
think
it.
that they were gonna add maybe later on, but they're busy.
Yeah,
We got Naugatuck cop cars and other cop cars going up
they're
there
doing
all
a
the
lot of
time.
training, they're doing a lot of training.
From
Yeah.
all different towns.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then the dogs they're breeding, some they're selling as, you know, a family pet.
But that answers your question.
Yeah.
You
Well,
should talk about it.
did you see, There was a garage up there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Did they use that garage as a,
They might have used parts of it,
oh, yeah,
but it looks like they did build something new.
because they were supposed to build a wing in the back by the state property, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. You ever take them
Metal
rocks,
structure.
you ever take them rocks away where they had the state property blocked off?
I don't know.
Because he did, he blocked the road up, you can't park there no more. And it's not, huh?
They could have, I don't
No,
know.
he did.
All right, I'll accept them. Anything else? Or go ahead.
There's a bunch of new zoning regulations that came into effect in January from the state. So I don't know if it's something you want to talk about, if we want the attorney to talk about, to mention, or copies to everybody.
I'd prefer a copy to
We
start.
have to still work on those. And some of them we have to decide if we want to do, like, infrastructure.
A Couple things we have to opt in or opt out, and I think the town has to do it first.
We're working on all that, along with our affordable housing plan. That has to be done.
Or maybe you can give us copies of what the new regs are, so that we can know and
Right now.
No. Anything else?
No.
Nope.
You good? All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
so move.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Oh.
Recording stopped.
You wanna
Thanks,
stay-
everybody.
you wanna stay a little longer? So.